Good evening, good day, or good morning, wherever you may be. Welcome to the Austrian edition of the Wall of Champions podcast. And a bit of a change in driver lineup tonight. Obviously, Webby, that's me, is here. Again, joined by Luce, hopefully over his technical difficulties from the last one. And,
Let us hope.
And instead of and Greg tonight, we have and Matt. Evening, Matt.
Good evening, guys.
All right.
Isn't he a champion though?
Actually, yes, he is an F1A champion. So
I do qualify. 1998.
Yeah,
F1A champion.
So it's just the Wall of Champions tonight. There's no need for an "and" bit at the end.
I've come to take over Lewis's dropout problems.
All right, so we'll get started here pretty quickly. We'll go straight into the race that was Austria. If we bring up the qualifying results, there we go on the screen now. And gentlemen, we saw Valtteri Bottas get his second pole position of the season. What did we make of that?
And the crowd starts chanting, "Default, default." I honestly reckon Seb would have got him. I reckon he would have pipped him.
No, I don't think so.
You're obviously talking about the yellow flag that came out for Grosjean.
Yep.
No, personally, I think if you watch the practice sessions, not just who finished on top in the practice sessions, but who was consistently quick throughout the session, Bottas was definitely. He was always at the end of runs. He was always the quickest, and then the headline quali runs coming at the end, and obviously Lewis topped pretty much all the practice sessions, but Bottas was pressuring him the whole weekend. So I don't think Ferrari had much more to give in qualifying. It was close, but
well, that's the main thing, is it was very, very close. Like in the end, there was only sort of less than half a tenth in it between Bottas and Vettel. I mean, what did we think of Hamilton? I mean, he obviously didn't really play a part in the run for pole. Do we think that he wasn't really pushing because he had the penalty?
nah, I think Bottas just generally got in the groove a bit better during the weekend. And same thing, Nico was always a bit better than Lewis here as well. I think we saw over the past couple of years, Nico was, he should have won in
Last year.
Yeah, he should have won last year. I'm pretty sure he was not on pole in 2014, but then did win in 2014. Close in 2015. So it's probably not Lewis's strongest track. And also, he did say that having to do Q2 on the soft tire on the super soft, instead of the ultra soft, put him out of rhythm a little bit, and then obviously lost his second run due to the yellows. So
Yeah, okay. Well, that's an interesting theory that it could be a bogey track. What do you think of that, Luce? Could it be a Hamilton bogey track at Austria?
I haven't really taken too much notice of how he's gone in past years. Obviously, last year he ran into Rosberg and stuff. But it'd be weird if it was, because obviously you've got two big braking zones, and he's sort of renowned as being a really good braker. So perhaps maybe he was even overheating his brakes, and that was his problem. Why Bottas could keep his in the range during the qualifying run, and that was the thing that got him that bit extra time. But he's sort of in qualifying anyway. Even in he topped Q1 by a bit, but yeah, it just wasn't there in Q3. It was a bit funny.
Yeah,
you need braking confidence, and he did have a brake failure in practice.
He did.
I can't remember what session. So
FP3.
Three. Yeah, it's FP3.
You have seen him go around on qualifying laps in the past, just locking the rears.
Yeah.
Into turn 2, I think in 2014 maybe, and
Yeah, he went off one year, didn't he?
Yeah, he had
2014.
Yeah, he went off in 2014, and then I think Rosberg went off the road as well in the same session. Or he had he had a problem with the car, and then Rosberg binned it. That was 2014, I thought. I think Rosberg was off the track at the end.
Yep, that's right.
And that was when the Williams got pole. That was when Massa was last on pole.
No, I think they both went off in 2015 as well.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, looking on, we obviously had further 0.3 back from Hamilton in the end, so half a second off his teammate. Kimi Räikkönen, P4, a perpetual P4 it seems for Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah, he's generally 3-4 tenths off everywhere, so I think it's sort of what we've come to expect, unfortunately.
Yeah, but we also had a monumental battle then between the Red Bull drivers in fifth and sixth, and as he seems to do, even though he looks slower the whole weekend, Daniel Ricciardo finds a lap in Q3 and gets it done.
Well, it's not just in practice. He finds it in the middle of. He finds it in Q3 just about every time. He'll find that extra. It's not just 1 or 2 tenths. He'll find half a second sometimes.
Yeah,
He did it. He did it again.
he was a tenth off. He was a tenth off Verstappen in Q1. He was 2 tenths off Verstappen in Q2, and then got a tenth on him in Q3.
Yeah, I think Max had a bit of a dodgy Q3. They tried to do that three. He had 3 sets of new tires left, and he had to hurry up his program, and it just didn't really work out. It was a bit messy.
Yeah, that's right.
And Daniel did the lap, so that's why he ended up ahead.
Yeah. All right, and we saw a good qualifying from Romain Grosjean, although I did really feel for Magnussen because Magnussen looked faster than him all weekend and then obviously had the suspension failure in Q1. And he was easily going to go through to Q2, so it's what could have been for Haas. They could have well been 7th and 8th on the grid with Magnussen and Grosjean.
Yeah, it's much. Sorry, go ahead.
You go.
Oh, it was much like Williams, sort of the last, or not Williams, it's Force India the last few rounds where they've been in good positions, and this time it was Haas's turn where they had a chance of having both drivers, obviously 7th and 8th, and being in a great position for the race, but obviously it just wasn't to be for Magnussen.
Been driving really good, Magnussen. Really stepped it up a little bit since last year, and
Yep.
I think he's obviously not struggling as much with the brakes as Grosjean, or as Gunther Steiner said, he's driving around it better than Grosjean. So
yeah,
a good job.
The Haas looked like a better car this weekend, that's for sure. And
I think they got an engine upgrade. And I'm not sure about this, but Ferrari definitely had one scheduled for Silverstone, and I'm not sure if they maybe introduced something here.
Yeah, it's possible. I do know. I know you're right. I know Haas got the new spec or the latest spec Ferrari this weekend, and it certainly paid dividends for them. I was just going to quickly before we move on from Magnussen, what did you make of his suspension failure in Q1? Was it just a random failure? Did he belt a curb?
I think it's probably a random failure. I didn't see him go off anywhere. The TV cameras probably would have showed it, and I think they would have said, or he would have said, I went off earlier. These things carry over from practice, but I don't know if they stripped the suspension down in between practice and qualifying, or I mean, we saw in Monaco one year. I can't remember who it was exactly, but they hit the wall in practice. Oh, it was Perez actually had the incident with Maldonado, and actually the suspension broke in qualifying when he was on his way through the swimming pool. The second part of the swimming pool.
Yeah, so that's right. Yeah,
you can have these things go wrong. You can cause the problem in practice and not see it until qualifying. So maybe it was something like that.
It was probably, I reckon, sort of just general wear. I reckon from some of the curbs. Obviously, we saw it last year with some of the curves being pretty extreme, and it wasn't so much the first curves, but the second set of rumble strips that they've got around, particularly the last 2 turns. I reckon he's probably just gone over that a couple times too many, and it's just
most likely during practice, but because I don't think he did it in qualifying.
Yeah, it would have just been like just general wear, and they just haven't picked up on it, and it's just gone.
Yeah, well, so Force India did drop back. They actually seem to drop back quite a bit from Red Bull. They've been harassing Red Bull the last few rounds. They dropped back to 8th and 9th. Probably would have been 9th and 10th if Magnussen had have got through, which is interesting because I know Christian Horner was saying this was the 3rd most power sensitive track, and to see the Mercedes cars lose ground a little. The non-Mercedes factory Mercedes power cars, if that makes sense. Lose ground a little bit to the likes of Red Bull and Haas, I thought was interesting as well. And it could be that the latest spec Ferrari is a good engine compared to the customer spec Mercedes as it is right now.
Yeah, it tells you the difference between probably the midfield chassis between Haas and Force India, or whichever whoever gets the stronger engine can kind of go to the top of the midfield. And I guess that weekend in particular with the engine upgrade, Haas's chassis might be a bit ahead of Force India at the moment. Who knows? We'll see when we get to Silverstone.
And then I also reckon it's a bit of a. I reckon it's one of those sort of circuits as well where you sort of do need a bit of downforce, even though obviously there's lots of straights and stuff like that. Like every corner except for turn 2, you're carrying a bit of speed through. So obviously a good chassis and good aerodynamic efficiency as well as just downforce sort of helps around here. And obviously that Force India probably just isn't as good as the Red Bull, and obviously the Haas is pretty good with that new engine as well.
Yeah.
Yes. So the second sector Red Bull owned pretty much during the weekend and did not lose so much time in the last sector because you've got those 2 really quick corners at the end where obviously downforce makes a big difference in there. So the chassis got shown up a little bit potentially.
And that's probably what hurt Toro Rosso and Renault as well, who certainly seemed to fall back a little bit this weekend. Carlos Sainz did scrape into Q3, was P10, but both the Renaults, Hulkenberg missed Q3. I don't think there was any expectation that Jolyon Palmer was going to get past Q1, let alone into Q3. Had the McLarens at 12 and 13 as a first time participant and a long time McLaren fan. What did you make of McLaren's weekend, Matt?
It could have. Your channel. Oh, before I say that, you wanna.
That sounds like Greg has just joined us. Good evening, Greg.
Good evening. I thought this was a Wednesday program.
It's a Tuesday program now.
My bad.
It's okay. All right, Karen.
You've lost your spot.
Actually, it can still just be called the Wall of Champions and Greg. So
you can be impact substitute, Greg.
I'm a bit of a lagger.
All right, so carry on, Matt, with the McLaren assessment.
I thought could have showed better promise than what it ended up being. I think Alonso, I'm not going out of my way to say anything that's probably not obvious, but Alonso could have been in Q3 if he had the updated Spec 3, they're calling it, engine. He was very close. He was only a 10th behind Ocon in 9th, 10th and a half to Perez in 8th, and then 2/10 to Grosjean in 7th. But I think overall, what I've been reading is that you can't look into the latest Honda update as a massive boost in peak power. It's more of a boost in power that's usable throughout the race, better fuel consumption. So there probably wasn't too much more to give by either of those guys in qualifying, but maybe potentially more in the race, but we never got to see, I guess.
Yep. All right, and then just to round out what happened with the rest of quali, obviously Williams had a shocking qualifying session, but they bounced back in the race, which we'll get to. And obviously Sauber is now quite clearly the worst car in the field. And things aren't looking rosy for them with their team principal situation. They still don't have a team principal at Hinwil, so who knows what's going to happen there.
Yeah, I think there's some politics going on there, probably to do with the Honda thing as well, maybe trying to work out who should lead the team.
They're saying that Fred Vassar is hanging around a little bit, who's the former team principal at Renault from last year, before Cyril Adabitol took over. So yeah, it's interesting. They do think there's some politics there.
Who's the guy that we always see on the Sauber pit wall? He's been there for ages. His name has escaped me, but he did an interview with Will Buxton, and they were talking about Jorg Zander, I think his name is.
The technical director?
Yeah, trying to put a play in to be the team principal, and I think there's some politics going on there that there's more to it than just, we haven't found our team principal. There's some power plays going on in there.
I find it interesting that they got rid of Manisha without someone else lined up in the first place.
Yeah, she left purely because the direction of the team and
which is partly her fault.
Yeah,
partly.
They had enough. She had enough, and that was it. There's no point hanging around.
All right. Well, before we move on from quali, what are your memories from quali, Greg? You probably didn't even watch it.
I didn't even watch it.
Well, moving right along then.
I agree.
His memory was being disappointed when Alo didn't make top 10.
Yeah, I think I was playing City Skylines at the time. I was just listening to you guys watching it.
Too busy gridding to see the forming of the grid.
That's right.
All right, so we'll move on to the thing that matters. We'll move on to the race result. And there it is there. Second win of the season, second win of his career to Valtteri Bottas. So clap there for Valtteri. Always good to see another, a guy who doesn't have many wins get a win. How keen do you think Sebastian Vettel was to get past him?
Not that keen.
Yeah, I think he was sort of content in second.
Only because Lewis was probably still in fourth. He'd be disappointed he didn't win, but not as disappointed because he took championship points out of Lewis. I think in a normal race, he might be a little bit more disappointed he didn't get a crack or another lap or two. But
yeah, okay, all right. Well,
he did say though he's been in that position before, leading, wanting one less lap to come. So like probably Monaco 2011, and there's a couple of races where he's been hunted down. So he was not too disappointed that this time he didn't have enough laps.
Yes. So second race. That's the second race of the season. Obviously, Bottas has won with a steaming number 5 Ferrari chasing him down at the end. So whilst he almost bottled it at Russia, he kept his head pretty clear at Austria to take that win. So what we saw obviously was two cars out of the race by turn 1, and I'd like to hear what everybody thought of the driving of Daniil Kvyat down into turn 1, and we'll start with Greg since he hasn't said much so far.
It was pretty amateurish to be honest. It was the sort of thing you'd see someone. It looked like he panicked really. So, I don't know what else you can say about it other than it was completely his fault. Bit concerning that his response to locking up the brakes was to go full lock on the wheel and expect something different to happen. So yeah. More of those, you might not be long for the sport.
What do you think, Luce?
Yeah, it was it's not the greatest moment of his career.
Oh, Valtteri can't even handle it. He's gone.
Yeah, he's had enough.
He didn't even want to talk about what happened to Fernando down there at turn 1.
And it's funny because we were sort of talking about before the race, and then 30 seconds later, oh no.
I'm so sorry.
You were pretty much, he doesn't belong on the grid anymore.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. So first of all, the news of today is that it actually looks like he's about to sign a contract renewal at Toro Rosso.
Oh, really?
Yes. Which is interesting. But also, yeah, we were having a discussion before the race started about whether Kvyat would be an appealing target for other teams, like as a driver. And I think it's incidents like that. I mean, to be fair, he hasn't had a bad season in terms of crashing into people, but obviously he had the torpedo incident at China last year with Seb.
That wasn't his fault though.
No, I agree with that.
That was all Kimi.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm saying is in terms of the way people look at him is to say, But what happened at Austria is not something that happens all the time. But having said that, like you said, the way he responded to the lockup was not really becoming of a Formula One driver.
User entered your channel.
And since Matt's back, we'll ask him.
That happens again, I'll leave.
Yeah, what happened?
Kvyat.
What you thought of Kvyat taking out God himself down there at turn 1?
If you watch the two onboards, you've got Alonso going down to turn 1, and you can see him checking his mirrors. He's like fully across the situation, and then to me it seems like in those situations, Kvyat's at full capacity, and he's not really. It's all happening a bit too quick for him. And the same thing happened in I don't know if anyone's mentioned this, but the same thing happened in Russia last year, where he just pinches both fronts. And ends up in the back of someone. So I think he panics in that sort of situation. He's at capacity as to what's going on, and he's just not able to not able to react in time, and he just panicked and locked both fronts, and same result as Russia, straight into the back of someone.
So one thing that I was curious about after watching that Kvyat incident is obviously we saw, excuse me, in 2012, Romain Grosjean get a race ban for potentially dangerous driving or dangerous driving, whatever you want to. When did I do dangerous driving? At Spa, and he got kicked out for a race because other drivers said that they felt that he was dangerous to be around. What difference did we see between, say, what Grosjean was doing and then what we saw Kvyat do?
I think Grosjean had already had an incident or two before the Spa incident, which had led drivers to already be quite annoyed with him.
Wasn't Grosjean's problem is that he's moving around. That was the difference, really. He's moving around and then clipping people sideways.
Yeah,
it's a little bit different from just going up the back of somebody.
Yeah, that's no map awareness. What was going on with Grosjean? I think he was just floating around the road. Yeah. He did do some similar stuff. I mean, he took Webber out in Japan.
Yep.
With a similar-ish sort of, not really looking at what's going on. But yeah, there was a couple of them where he's just moving sideways across the track into people, and that's slightly different. That's not a misjudgment. That's just
reckless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was reckless driving. I think that's the main difference.
Yep, no worries. All right, well, the other one I wanted to mention was obviously Max Verstappen with his 5th retirement in 7 races. Most of them not his fault. It must be really difficult for him to watch Ricciardo finish on the podium 5 times in a row with a win.
I didn't realise he'd podiumed like that many times.
Yeah. He's been on the podium for, like I said, the last 5 races.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's an incredible run. We'll get to Ricciardo because I think that he's probably driving as well as what he ever has this season. And obviously he's benefited from some luck. There's no doubt about that. But in F1, you've got to be there to seize your opportunity, and I think that Ricciardo's stock is probably quite high in Formula One at the moment. But Verstappen, but it must be difficult for Verstappen to watch that happening, and to see his own car continuously braking on him.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's lowering Verstappen's stock.
Oh no, I don't mean. I just mean from a psychological perspective for Max, it must be difficult.
No, I'm sure he knows where the issues are. So
it'd be more difficult if Max wasn't outpacing Ricciardo. I think Max has been pretty good in quali this year. I think Daniel beat him in Austria, but hasn't been many races that Daniel's outqualified Max, and Max has always been ahead of him in the race, apart from this one when he retired. So Ricciardo does some good stuff. If we want to stick with Verstappen now, but yeah, he's obviously disappointed, and if there's when there's smoke, there's fire. So if he is going to Ferrari,
we'll get to that bit.
Well, he has said that he's losing confidence in Red Bull. I'm reading it right now on motorsport.com. So he's not, and he's got every right to sort of be a bit frustrated after obviously Baku is in 2nd or 3rd place there. And he had his car fail. Yeah, that's happened to him a couple times now. In Bahrain, he was up there and his car failed again. So it wouldn't be easy for him. And I reckon also with Ricciardo getting on the podium, I reckon it would be starting to eat at him. It would start to really frustrate him.
To be fair with the Baku one, he had a big accident in practice. And I'm always curious about when that happens, and then it's subsequently followed by a car failure in a race, where obviously you do question whether the accident in practice and therefore facilitating nearly at least a half rebuild of the car, whether that actually leads to the subsequent failure in a race or contributes to it.
Yeah, but it's a mechanical engine problem. It's not an installation problem. If it was installation and electrics, then probably you can attribute that, but
I think his failure in Baku was electrics, wasn't it?
I thought it was either hydraulics or.
Yeah, you could be right. I can't exactly remember.
I think if it's electrics, and it will go wrong straight away, and if it's mechanical, it's not likely to have been as a result of an accident, because otherwise it would go straight away. So I think that can be the case, like the suspension and maybe Magnussen qualifying and practice and qualifying linked, but I doubt that accident would have meant Verstappen retired in Baku.
Yep, fair enough. All right, well, so we've already discussed. Obviously, Bottas did a good job. He did what he had to do. And Seb lost the race in the first stint. For whatever reason, Mercedes was able to put sort of 7.5, 8 seconds on the Ferrari in the first stint, and then Seb spent the last part of the race getting that time back, and then almost did. He got within 0.6 at the end. It felt like a race where Seb was happy to finish second because of where Hamilton started.
Yeah, they lost that a bit. The Ferrari seems to work really good on the super soft, and I think that was a trait of last year's car as well. They went good on tracks that had the super soft. Struggled a little bit with the ultra soft in the first stint, but he was happy enough probably to close right up to Bottas at the end, and at least show that the Ferrari still got the pace when it needs to have it, because it's looked like Merc have probably had a slight edge in the last 2 or 3 races.
Yep. Okay. Well, we mentioned Daniel Ricciardo. Obviously, he had a pretty boring race. But then he had to defend his position on the penultimate lap, and I think that for where he may lack in lap speed, as opposed to Verstappen, he certainly doesn't lack in racecraft, particularly in defending that position from Hamilton at the end.
Yeah, that was fairly straightforward, but I think what was even more telling was that he wasn't that far behind Seb and Bottas.
Yeah, that's right.
The race. So. Like I wasn't expecting him to sort of stay that far up there. So that was interesting as well to see. The Red Bull has got some pace as well.
So it is. We might as well move to that now. There was something I had written down. So with the Red Bull pace, we saw in Baku that Verstappen was very, very, very competitive. Like take the fact that Ricciardo won a race off the table, but in practice and in qualifying, Verstappen was very, very fast. And he was the fastest driver on Friday, for example, on what a lot of people were predicting was a very power dependent circuit. And then we've come to Austria, which is, according to Christian Horner, the third most power sensitive circuit on the calendar. I would imagine after Spa and Monza, and to see that the Red Bull finishes the race 6 seconds off the lead, where in China they were over a minute. Is
some kind of progress?
Is it just a mirage? I mean, in a race that had no safety cars and had no strategy because everybody one stopped, and all the top 10 were on the same strategy to the end, with the exception of Hamilton, obviously. But is it a mirage, or is that Red Bull actually quickly becoming a real competitive package?
I think for sure that they've definitely stepped up since they fixed their wind tunnel problem. So I genuinely believe that from Silverstone they can win races almost on merit. They don't need to rely on 5 cars taking each other out or something like that, because the last 2 races, which they should have been buried, they were quite competitive, and they did get the Renault engine upgrade of some sort that was probably worth 2 or 3 tenths, and should put them at least where they were last year, towards the end of the year, with a chance of trying to push Mercedes and Ferrari into mistakes, or even maybe win on outright pace.
And with probably a more consistent driver lineup than the other 2 teams.
Yeah, both drivers are capable in that car. Well, obviously, Mercedes, like, for whatever reason, like one driver will have a good weekend and the other will sort of be back a little, and the other one will be up front the next week. So, and then you got Ferrari, where it's just Sebastian Vettel show, and Kimi Raikkonen battling away there in 5th.
Kimi Raikkonen shows up every now and then.
You talk about racecraft and Ricciardo. The defense, what he did defending wise was what he would be expected to do, and he did a good job of it. But he actually made his race passing Raikkonen into turn 3, and that was a really, really gutsy move on the inside with not much brake temperature, not much tyre temperature on the dirty part of the track, and he really, really muscled his way past Raikkonen, and that really allowed him to get the break over him and get away from Lewis a lot quicker.
And then he held on to it as well. I think Kimi tried to get him back in the next corner. I think.
Yeah, he really Kimmy tried to squeeze him at the apex, but Daniel really stuck it there on the inside and then shoved him off into the runoff there. And when he needs to be aggressive, he knows what he's doing.
He gets his elbows out, and he does it in a good way. You see, obviously, with Rosberg and Hamilton in the past, where they make contact, and Verstappen he can get a bit dubious. Well, Ricardo, he does it in a very smart manner. He knows the perfect place to put his car to keep or take a position.
He's really good. He's probably, if he's not the best driver in terms of racecraft on the grid, he's certainly one of the best.
Let's not forget. Let's not forget how he won the Malaysian Grand Prix last year, battling against Verstappen very, very cleanly, but very, very, very forthright, but very clean. In fact, I only really recall him making contact with Seb a couple of times at Mexico and Barcelona last year, didn't he have?
It was contact with China as well, wasn't there?
Ooh.
I think didn't they have some wheel to wheel action going into the fast left right middle of the track? Yeah,
they could have done, but I know that Mexico was Seb's fault but and then obviously Daniel just went in way too hot into turn one at Barcelona when they had the infamous "Are we racing or playing ping pong?" radio call from Seb.
Yeah.
All right.
But more often than not, he's amazing in what should be a really, really difficult circumstance to overtake. He just somehow keeps control. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, look at Hungary.
Yeah,
those overtakes he pulled in 2014, and then
the one
in
Monza,
2015.
The one at Monza he did, where he just moved from one side to the other, like in the braking zone.
On his teammate.
Yeah, I don't understand how he... I guess I'm more sensitive to that from sim racing, where if you tried that, you'd just sort of, with that level of downforce, they just sort of throw you off the road.
I imagine Luce's way of describing that would be, if you try that, you'd die.
It was pretty dangerous. It was dangerous, wasn't it? Yeah.
Very dangerous.
Yes.
All right. But I mean, you made a valid point there about his overtake on Raikkonen. It was his racecraft that got him P3 rather than outright pace. But having said that Red Bull's looking like a handier car, race by race. And to hold off Hamilton, who was on the ultra softs, was doing fastest laps of the race in a Mercedes on qualifying mode, from what we heard over the radio. So I just thought it was really impressive, to hold that off. And I don't say that as a patriotic Australian either. So Hamilton was fourth. What did you make of his race? Did he maximise it, or was he a little bit underwhelming? I'll start with you, Luce.
He was a bit underwhelming. It was a bit quiet. Obviously, he picked up a spot or two at the start, but then he never really hassled Raikkonen. And then obviously he sort of caught up to Ricardo and sort of had a look, but it's not really what you'd come to expect from him, to be honest.
What do you make of it?
I don't think there was too much he could do, to be honest. He did the best that he could, really, with the so it's really hard to pass at Australia. There's the straight, you don't have the DRS on the longest straight. You've only got it on the two short straights. You're kind of left to try and get a really good exit out of turn 3, and you're traction limited. And then after that, you've got to really stay close in the second sector, which Raikkonen and Ricardo wouldn't have been too sloppy in there. I think, yeah, he was probably on the wrong tyre as well. He had the super soft in the first stint, pitted earlier when he probably should have gone longer, or was supposed to go longer. So it was all a bit messy for him, but he did what he could, and he almost got on the podium, so there's probably not much more to ask of him.
Yeah, I agree. But even in his own words, he was kind of disappointed with the way he performed. It was one of the only post-race interviews I actually watched, and he was quite underwhelmed with his own performance.
Yeah, he qualified that after, but
he just said that he wasn't good when it counted. So he must have been talking about when he was in combat, but I guess, I don't know, I thought he drove alright, He seemed to be having issues with balance throughout the whole race, which seemed to be fixed, I guess, or he just drove around the problems. So I didn't think he could do that much more than he did.
As 2014 through to 16 precondition us to think that if the Mercedes isn't first or second, then they've underperformed. Like, I mean, obviously, if you look at a competitive grid, which we seemingly have this year, driving to fourth from eighth, historically in Formula One is a good result. Like, he did well against competitive cars, particularly the Ferrari. If you consider the Ferrari and the Red Bull, he got past the Haas's, the Force India. He done what he could do. But has the Mercedes dominance of the last sort of 3.5 years made us, has it preconditioned us to go fourth for Hamilton? Oh, he didn't really perform well, did he?
Yeah, well, from 8th on the grid, yeah, he should have won that.
Yes.
He walked through in 2014 from 10th to 2nd after 3 laps or whatever it was.
Something
So
like that. That's probably why he's disappointed, because he's used to it as well. So he probably thought, I mustn't have driven as well if I didn't steam through the field like I normally do.
Yeah. What do you think, Luce?
Well, it wasn't so much like he's overtaken or anything like that. It's just for those periods of the race where he wasn't as fast as what I guess that Mercedes is capable of. I think, like, after his pit stop, I would have thought he would have been a little bit quicker than what he was, and then he was behind Raikkonen. He wasn't right with him for quite a while, and when he was behind him, like, I would have thought he would have just zipped right up to him, and it took him a while just to sort of get onto him. So I don't think he was at his best.
Okay.
And but he had his moments where he was obviously towards the end. He sort of found his rhythm, but it was too late.
everyone went in and out in that race, but because the tyres are blistering, some blistering more than others.
Yeah, I mean, we
the race,
by the same margin that Lewis finished fourth for. Sebastian lost more than that in the first stint to Bottas. So, it seemed that, I think, as Matt alluded to earlier, the super soft worked better on the Ferrari and the ultra soft worked better on the Mercedes.
Yeah, Hamilton beat Raikkonen by 13 seconds in the end.
Kimi's obviously next. Kimi's 20 seconds off the lead at the end of the race.
That wasn't what we predicted. We predicted fastest laps coming at the end of the race.
We thought on a penultimate lap, Kimi would nail the fastest lap and still finish 20 seconds off the pace.
As he always does.
He had the pace though. You can see the fastest lap. That's how it usually works.
Well, he actually, if you check the FIA graph,
second fastest lap.
His last stint wasn't too bad, but it just
because he was catching Hamilton,
too late,
wasn't he, for a bit?
Yeah,
but then
he was.
But then Hamilton was catching Ricciardo, and then he just sort of.
I mean, obviously, Kimi lost a fair bit of that time with the fact that Ferrari left him out there for a long time at the start on what was obviously not the best tyre for the Ferrari. They long stinted him on the Ultra to try and interfere with Bottas, I think.
They long stinted him. You'd expect him with the fresh tyres to come back at them.
Yeah, but the problem was that he lost so much time in the first stint by staying out so much longer on a tyre that didn't suit that car.
Oh yeah, I know, but he didn't really, like Matt just said, other Matt.
Yeah.
He didn't. His last stint was kind of average.
Yeah, he done some fastest laps at the start, and then he had the. We called it. We said it was going to be a warm night through Butter when Bottas got onto the back of him. And it was like he wasn't even existent. Like, he basically just rolled out the red carpet for Valtteri to go past him. So.
Yeah, if Ferrari did that to stop Bottas, it was a waste of time, because just one of the easier DRS overtakes.
Yeah. I think you heard it on the radio. They said that Valtteri, you would have come out behind Valtteri anyway. So
Lewis.
Oh, was that Lewis?
Yes.
I thought they said that to Kimi.
Yeah, they said it to Kimi. No, they said it to Kimi about Lewis. You said Bottas. It was about Lewis.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I had a Kimi moment where I got Bottas and Hamilton confused.
Oh, how was he in front of us?
How was he in front? What happened? Oh, okay, yeah. Well, it makes sense that they keep him out to try and, like, it's the same thing that they did with Lewis against Seb at Spain, where they gave him a slightly different tyre strategy to give him the pace to get past.
Yep. Yeah, but diminishing returns for Raikkonen, and they left him out there just so Bottas could pass him with the DRS. Like,
yeah, I know.
Bring him in.
He didn't even need the DRS, did he? He just. But yeah, you're the Raikkonen fan in here, Luce. What'd you make of it?
Well, they did leave him out too long. I could see what they were trying to do, and obviously it didn't quite work. And I think, as we've seen over the last sort of 12 to 24 months, I don't think he's not the driver that's going to profusely block or anything like that. Like, if it was, I don't know, a Verstappen or a Kvyat or...
Have him in the wall.
Or even someone like Van Dorn or someone like they would have tried blocking and maybe held him up for a couple more corners, but.
An interesting character assessment of Vandalin. I don't know where you're pulling that from.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any of him doing anything.
We'll get to him after, I'm sure.
Oh, we will. We'll hear Luce's opinion on Stoffel Van Dorn, I'm sure. All right. Well, Grosjean was last of the non-lap runners. Really, really good race for Grosjean, and it looked like it was opportunity missed because obviously Magnussen had his hydraulics failure. I believe it was hydraulics in the race, and then he managed to sneak some profanity past the overlords who watched the log feed. so that was that was good. But yeah, it was good points haul for Haas. But yeah, opportunity missed because they probably would have been 6th and 7th. Because Magnussen had, I mean, that's if they weren't compromising quali. But when Magnussen retired, he was pressuring Stroll for points. So unfortunate for them. Force India 7th and 8th, as we said before, they didn't seem to be their blistering selves this weekend. The track made just didn't suit them. But Williams from 17th and 18th on the grid, both finished in the top 10. I mean, to be fair, they were in the top 10 after the first lap, so they made all their positions at the start with the carnage that went on at turn 1. But that's still a good drive from Massa and Stroll, and Stroll's beginning to not look so bad against Felipe Massa.
To Stroll, yeah.
Yeah, so he's been doing a bit of work with Rob Wilson, as we know.
Yep.
He's a driver coach, for anyone who doesn't know. And that seemed to help him after Canada, actually, to just help him out with his technique a little bit. And then he did say he went back to setup direction that he was using at the start of the year. So probably a combination of the two, and he's looked a lot closer to Massa. But Williams put a lot of updates on this weekend, and I think probably either none of them worked, or they need some time to set the car up again around these updates. So they've got their bad week out of the way and got away with it. Hopefully for them in Silverstone, it's a bit better.
I think they were a bit lucky, to be honest. Speed-wise, they probably weren't worthy of both their cars being in the points. But when you've got Verstappen, Alonso, and Kevin Magnussen, who would have been in the top 10, and then Kvyat, Sainz also having problems. Like they were racing, Palmer for the points really, and you don't want to be fighting Palmer for points.
Yeah, but Massa was closing on Ocon at the end. I think Ocon and Massa were quite close. So.
Yeah, Massa had the late switch to ultras, so he was very, very fast at the end of the race.
Yeah, Ocon had a bit of a whinge after the race about his strategy. He said he lost 10 seconds somewhere. I don't know. I don't really know where, but that put Massa right on the back of him. So Williams, for a crap weekend, to be not too far off Force India is probably a very good save, despite the number of people that could have scored and didn't show up.
Well, one guy who could have scored in P11, Luce already mentioned him, the Polygon himself, P11, Jolyon Palmer.
Yeah, he couldn't have scored. There's no chance.
He was, it was pretty close, Luce. He almost got that point.
How far was he behind Stroll?
He wasn't that far behind him. I haven't got the times, but yeah, he wasn't that far behind him at the end.
Far enough.
That Renault wasn't going to pass that Williams in a straight line.
No. All right. So the guy finished.
Palmer, actually. Yep. Did you read today that?
I read the headline about it.
Yeah, he's
what did he
taken
say?
some. Basically, he's saying he's adapted his driving style to mimic Hulkenberg's a little bit.
Fast?
I don't know what.
I was going to go with competent, but
basically he said Nico's got a lot of experience driving Formula One cars. Blah blah blah. I've tried to copy a few things and it's helped. Well, the headline mentions turnaround, but I didn't see any turnaround. He still got out-qualified by quite a margin. And, he got lucky that Hulkenberg had a crap start. That's why he beat him. But, he's trying, I guess.
They also put Hulkenberg on the slowest tyre.
Most of the race.
Yeah, he pitted on lap 17 or something.
He pitted very early.
Actually, because they look good with delivery.
Yes.
Apart from that. I'm not sure why you used them.
You might as well have had lead balloons on them.
Yeah. So, well, yeah. Just to finish that, Hulkenberg did finish 13th, but I assumed he must have had a problem because he obviously boxed very early and then was struggling at the back of the field. But as it turns out, afterwards, it was just the soft tire didn't work. It just didn't work. It was too slow. So Renault threw themselves on the coals there, and I
don't know what compelled them to do that. Apart from, as I said,
bad start. He had a shocking start.
Yeah, his reaction was like 5 seconds. It was.
Yeah.
He was looking at Bottas, thinking, "Man, he must have jumped the start."
We're gonna get to that. So, all right. So the man in the middle, the filling in that sandwich, it was Stoffel Vandoorne, and now I'm going to have my rant of the rant of the podcast because Stoffel Vandoorne got a penalty for ignoring blue flags, and yet Sergio Perez was down there racing with Valtteri Bottas. Being a lap out, defending and racing Bottas, nothing said, and Vandoorne cops a penalty, and it just seems woefully inconsistent. I know Matt's going to agree with me, so I'm going to skip him, but it just seems woefully inconsistent that Vandoorne. I know they get the penalty for continuously ignoring blue flags, but I can guarantee you Bottas lost more time battling with Perez and having to overtake him than what Kimi lost behind Vandoorne because he ignored a couple of blue flag marshal points. Greg, go.
I'm just following on, just judging from what you've said. Does that mean Lewis isn't like sharing that opinion?
Oh no, Lewis and I haven't spoken about it yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was bullshit. We spoke about it at the time. I mean, it's pretty obvious. It seems ridiculous that you can really stuff up someone who catches you really quickly, but if they're kind of slowly catching you, like the way Kimi likes to sit behind people and not overtake them, which is a very Kimi thing to do.
And complain on his radio.
Yeah, and complain on his radio about turbulence or whatever, the K2 or whatever. And, it's kind of rubbish that someone can bulk someone else really, really bad, or in this case, race them. But as long as they haven't crossed three blue flag marker points or whatever it is, so I don't know. They need to. I don't know what they can do about it, to be honest, other than
particularly
change the rule.
Particularly when you consider that was a drive-through that Vandoorne was given. It wasn't a 10-second post-race penalty or a 5-second penalty. It was a drive-through.
Yeah, that's pretty severe.
And so you've got to think that may very well have cost him his first point of the year as well.
That's what I was wondering. So. No? Okay.
How far behind was Stroll, was he?
Look, Vandoorne, I've checked the FIA graphs, and Vandoorne's pace was not too bad in the final stint. He was about a lap slower than Hamilton, and his fastest lap was a second off Hamilton's fastest lap. So he had the pace, but without the horsepower, he's not going to be able to pass. There's no way he would be able to pass Palmer, and I think that's ultimately why he got the penalty. From what I read, is that he was trying to use the leaders as a way of streaming and DRSing and trying to get up to the back of Palmer so he could overtake him, because he sat there for the whole race pretty much, and there was no way past. So he took the risk. Got the penalty, but whatever, he was going to be stuck there anyway. So
it turns out the McLaren fan was the most reasoned one of us.
That's just what I read. That's just what I read. I mean,
he's secretly seething.
It would be nice, but if that's what he was doing, then it was worth the crack.
But what did you think of what Perez was doing though?
Yeah, well, if you see someone down the inside of turn 3 and the leader's on the outside, then
there's something wrong.
That's definitely syndrome of average driver.
I knew that was coming.
He thinks he can race the leader. Like, I don't. What was he thinking? The cars are silver, so it's obvious who it is.
Yep.
He's definitely not racing him. So why would you be defending?
Yeah. What'd you make of it, Luce?
It was unacceptable. And I think it sums up the stewards, because they've been wildly inconsistent. Obviously, we saw in the last round, Bottas should have been flat out penalised. There's a couple other incidents they sort of butchered last weekend, and then obviously there was a lot of talk with the jump start, and obviously a penalty for that is only 5 seconds at a pit stop or added to your time,
That's funny.
Which is a complete joke. That could be exploited by a few people. I'm surprised it hasn't been.
If I had a poor grid spot, mate, I'd be just jumping ahead as the lights came on.
I don't think it's a black and white
Yeah,
5-second penalty. I think they get given a list of penalties.
Yeah, if it's
a
a flagrant jump start, then yeah, they'll DQ you.
If Whirlline starts 20th and ends up first, they're not going to give you 5 seconds.
Yeah, but how I'd say it is, if it looks like he's trying to just anticipate it and stuffs it up, obviously drive through.
I
And
mean,
if they're cheating, then just stop go penalty
Yeah,
for
no,
30
I
seconds or
got a
something.
drive through at Coda. I would expect Bottas to at least get that.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I think Luce just to back up Luce's point is that if you were second and you jumped the start just a little bit, but it gave you the lead of the race in track position and you were able to gap and you put more than 5 seconds on the field, then that wins you the race.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't. Then again, they might not give a 5-second penalty for that.
But they
might
can't
say you gain the advantage of leading the race, therefore
But they
have a
can't-
10 second.
But they can't be
that's
arbitrary like that. It's got to be
Yeah,
like
there has to be a penalty for the severity of it. Like there has to be a assigned proper penalty
Yeah.
for each
Well,
case.
I
not
think they
based
get
on that.
given. Yeah, they get given a series of penalties, like most incidents.
Yeah, you say that, but
They-
but the commentators knew that it was a 5 seconds. It was a 5-second time penalty for a jump start. So it's obviously listed that it's a 5-second. It's a 5-second penalty
I think
for a
that
jump
was
start.
a precedent thing. That someone had jumped the start and got 5 seconds before.
It's listed.
therefore.
It's listed in the rules, I'm sure, but that's okay. We won't get hung up on that. We all thought. I mean, that we'll get to the jump start thing after we finish off the race result. But I think it's too soft of a penalty because it can definitely affect the result of a Grand Prix.
Yeah, well, you go to the Olympics, you jump the start, you get disqualified, you get told to walk off. You don't even get to do the race, so you know.
Yeah.
Do it in North
Yeah,
Korea and it's
there's
20
no
years
5
hard
second
labour.
penalties
jeez.
in the Olympics, but
Yeah.
Yeah, but like it's just one of those things.
you also get sent off in cycling if you touch someone, and that didn't happen. So.
All right, so we'll finish off. It was a tough race for Sauber pace wise. They didn't have any pace at all. The Toro Rossos, obviously Kvyat torpedoed turn 1. Carlos Sainz had a electrics failure. I'm tempted to say, although that might be wrong. But he definitely had a failure. It might have been hydraulics. And he was very unhappy when they wheeled him into the garage, where he said, "What a magnificent race," or something along those lines.
Glorious race.
Yes, that's glorious. That's the one he used.
It was
And
a bad weekend for him. He had some technical problems in practice as well. So
yeah, and we went over the other 3 retirements in Magnussen, Alonso, and Verstappen. So if we move to the Drivers' Championship now, it doesn't really change except that Perez jumped Verstappen for 6th place, which goes to show you how bad of a run Max is having. But at the top, you've got now a 20-point gap between Vettel and Hamilton going into Silverstone and then the summer break. So we're getting close to the midpoint of the season, and it's close. It's really close. We're getting to the weekend and not knowing which team's going to win.
Yeah, it's good.
no, 20. Lewis Hamilton will have you think that 20 points is the end of the world, but he knows that
It's not even
it's
a
definitely
race.
not the end of the world. It's not even a race win, so it's a 2nd place. I like to convert the gaps to the old money because it seems to make it a bit easier for me. So it's about a 6-8 point gap. Which back in the day.
How is that easier than just looking at the points as they are?
Because I
It
just,
gives
I
you
just
some context.
What the hell's wrong with your maths?
You just remember seeing Kimmy's gap to Alonso in 05 and thinking, that's insurmountable.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
20 points.
Like that 30 between 25 and 30, you're like, nah, it's all over. But I remember like thinking, and even like Hamilton in 07, 17 points, I was like, yeah, he's got it, it's all over. So if I convert this back to the 6 to 8 points, it's really close. So he's got nothing to worry about at the moment.
All right, so looking at that, mathematically, obviously, still a lot of drivers in contention for the World Championship. Realistically, how many drivers are in contention for this World Championship after Austria? Greg?
2.
Luce?
Well, yeah,
Anything
2.
can happen. But,
I-
but probably 2.
Bottas would have to have a good run in the next few races to sort of give himself a chance. But realistically, I only see Hamilton and Vettel.
But with Hamilton's form,
No.
maybe it's just one.
Matt?
Nah, I wouldn't. The only reason Ricardo's on the limit, obviously, because
Yeah. I wasn't sure what to say about him.
He's about 25 points behind the gold money. So he's on the limit. But if Red Bull can get their shit together for the next couple, then, you know, his consistency's meant that he's where he is now, even with not the fastest car to start the year, and without knowing who's going to be quick out of Ferrari and Mercedes. If Red Bull do get to the top, it could be quite easy to take points, but Daniel's biggest problem then would probably be Max.
Yeah, so you've echoed my thoughts, which was I actually think, first of all, I think Bottas is still a very good chance because I think I think Bottas is more likely to remain pretty flat, if you know what I mean, through the races. He's the least likely of the top three to get emotional and do something silly, like, I don't know, deliberately drive into somebody behind a safety car or throw his steering wheel out after having collected his teammate. I think Bottas is, but having said that, Bottas doesn't have experience in a championship fight in Formula One. So, and the other two obviously have 7 between them, so they're well versed in these things. But I think Bottas can still do it. But I'm with you. I think Ricciardo. I agree with the Red Bull thing. If Red Bull get to the front, I actually think they'll find it very easy to steal points from Vettel and Hamilton in the championship. But like you said, Max will be his biggest opponent. Having said that, Max has absolutely zero chance in this championship, like even less than Kimi, and that's saying something.
You have to assume will Max actually help him.
Well, that's right. So, but yeah, I mean that's a tough thing for Red Bull to deal with if they're saying, look, Daniel can actually legitimately win this championship, Max. You need to help him out, and Max is like, no. So whereas the disadvantage for Hamilton and Bottas is they're both in the fight. And as much as Sky might like to tell you that, it'll sort itself out naturally and then Hamilton will be the number one driver, the truth of the matter is there's only 15 points between them. And Bottas has a DNF. So they're actually extremely close. The thing that will help, I think, Hamilton and Bottas as the season goes on is the fact that they've both used such a low amount of componentry for their power units. I think Hamilton's used two ICEs, 2 turbos. Bottas hasn't used much more than that. Whereas both Ferraris are at the limit on their turbochargers. And they've gone through quite a few components as well because they've introduced new variants. And I think in the second half of the year, that will be a benefit to Mercedes. Well, I should say in the third quarter of the year, I think that will be a benefit to Mercedes because inevitably the Ferraris are going to start taking a penalty. And the same's true for Red Bull, obviously, because Red Bull's already at the limit.
Yeah, and Merc will definitely have their strong tracks. Like, there's still Monza, there's still Spa, there's still, tracks with big straights where they're guaranteed to be quick. Doesn't matter what happens. And that's where maybe Red Bull and Ferrari will have a tougher time on those ones. And Merc can still give them a run for their money at places like Singapore and Hungary. So Merc's not out of it yet.
Yeah, yep.
Merc's not out of it. They lead the Constructors' Championship.
Oh, no one cares. No one cares. No one cares about that.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I think that it is an important point to go back to just about Bottas. Like we said, he's 15 points off Hamilton with the DNF up his sleeve. So that battle's not as one-sided as some people would like to think it is, or some people think it is. I think that Bottas is doing a cracking job. But the unfortunate thing for Ferrari is it's exposing the weakness of Kimi Räikkönen from the Constructors' Championship perspective. Like Kimi is, 53 points behind Bottas in the championship. And at this he's also 24 points behind Ricciardo in the championship. Now Kimi's had some issues, but I don't want to keep going back to Alan Permane talking to Fissy. But I know you've got some understeer, but you can't be 3 seconds a lap slower than your teammate. Like, to be that far behind Seb is damning on Kimi's performance so far this year. And I know we keep harping on it, and Luce is going to get pissed, but it's Ferrari are being exposed in the Constructors' Championship by that.
Yeah, but they shafted him in Monaco.
I don't disagree, and they shafted him in Austria.
Yeah,
but
if they keep shafting him and knocking his confidence, then it's kind of digging your own grave.
And then also, Bottas has completely ruined 2 of his races.
Bottas was very lucky in Baku to not get a penalty and B get a lucky dog lap back, and then C finish third. Second.
Obviously, being a Kimi Räikkönen fan, it's sort of hard for me not to be biased. But if I was to look at, like, we've seen incidents exactly like that throughout the years, and every time something like that, the driver that caused it was penalised. I know they're trying to be more lenient to drivers, but what he did should be a penalty every time.
To be fair, Luce, Ocon didn't get a penalty.
Yeah, look, to be honest, the points gap for Kimi to the other guys doesn't worry me too much, because there's an explanation for all that. The thing we don't have an explanation for is why he's consistently out-qualified by big margins. And that's the bigger problem at the moment. The points gap, he's almost got the same reasons for the gap as Verstappen does. He just hasn't had the luck in the races, but qualifying, he's definitely been lacking there. And obviously, if you hang around in the mid part of the top 10 in qualifying, then you're going to end up in some problems.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, Perez is 6th, so he's having a good season. But he's 11.
Justifying his big head.
Yeah, he's 11 points ahead of his teammate, and they're boxing Verstappen, who's dropped to 7th, who was spoke at. But Max is driving well this year. He's had zero luck. Like if he had no luck, he'd have no luck at all. Bad luck if he had no luck at all. Sorry, everybody knew what I was trying to say there. Just quickly, Greg, a comment from you in regards to Kimi hurting Ferrari's Constructors' Championship effort.
Oh yeah, well I've already said, haven't I? He's hurting it, but
and the reasoning that I mean, obviously it's not all his own fault. Shafted at Monaco, like Matt said, he obviously got a bad strategy at Austria, but that doesn't change the lap time discrepancy to Seb, particularly in race conditions.
Yeah, he isn't a massive amount off Seb, but it's because it's so tight this year. It's enough, I guess. So I don't think there's any quick fix when you're just a little bit off.
The quali's killing him.
Yeah, well, quali's always been his problem, hasn't it? So he's gonna have to sort it out. Otherwise, this might actually be his last year at Ferrari.
Well, Ferrari don't want Alo, and Verstappen's not going to come until 2019. So to be honest, he's right in the box seat for one more year.
No Sainz, no Ricardo.
They're not going to sign for a year.
Oh,
they want Verstappen.
They want Verstappen.
Yeah, they want him.
I don't want
You
him.
got to read between the lines. Marchioni's singing.
Whatever.
So I hear that Marchioni also put a rocket up Kimi after Sunday as well.
Yeah, he did. He called him a laggard.
Yep. So
was that before or after they left him out on the ultras?
It doesn't matter. He was already miles behind Seb before they even did that. So he should have been up there in front of Ricciardo. Like, I know Ricciardo got his elbows out, but he's in a Ferrari, and he's been losing time to Ricciardo, losing ground in the championship the last few races. So, Ricciardo caught him and then passed him. So
basically, I can't see Ferrari winning the constructors at this rate.
No, they won't.
No, they won't.
They won't do it.
They won't.
Mercedes will win the constructors.
Yeah, but all right. So we will get to the driver mark quickly. I know we're running long, but I guess there's 4 of us, so it's taking a bit longer. So the championship, there's not much change. As I said, Max dropped down to 7th. Lance Stroll came up to 11th at expense of Hulkenberg, and Grosjean and Magnussen switched positions in 13th and 14th. No change anywhere else. In fact, it was the top 6 drivers in the championship scored points, and there was a couple of stragglers. So in the constructors, quickly, we obviously already mentioned it. Mercedes are now 33 points ahead of Ferrari. They got 37 on the weekend, ahead of Ferrari's 28. Red Bull's distant in third from the back end from the front, so they're likely to just finish third unless their upturn in skill continues and somehow Kimi's underperformance allows Red Bull to still second in the constructors, which is definitely a chance.
Yeah, that could happen.
It could happen.
That's a serious threat of happening, that.
Yep. Force India is still solidly in fourth. They got another 10 points in the weekend, so they had the fourth biggest points haul for fourth in the championship. Williams is still fifth, from Toro Rosso, Haas, Renault, Sauber, and McLaren. All right, so that finishes off the results in the championships. So we'll go quickly to the Bottas jump start. I'll go to Greg first. Did Bottas jump the start, Greg?
I don't know, but I defer to the system they have in place. If it's consistent across everything all the time, then I say if it doesn't think he jumped the start, then he didn't jump the start.
Luce, did Bottas jump the start?
Well, obviously the system said no, but when I watched it live, I immediately thought he'd jump it. So I'll trust the system, but my eyes told me that yes, he jumped it.
Matt, did Bottas jump the start?
I'd have to agree with both Lewis and Greg. I think to the rules he didn't jump the start, so it's not classified as a jump start. But like Seb said, and like I was saying before, to the delta that the FIA works to is 0.2 of a second, and that's the quickest a human can react. And he must have let go of the clutch within 0.2 of a second for his car to not have reacted within that 0.2 of a second, given the time delay of when you let go of the clutch and the car launches. So I think his hand jumped the start, but his car didn't jump the start.
All right, well, I'll ask myself the same. I'll hold a mirror up. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. That's giving me nightmares now.
What do you think,
Matt? No, he didn't jump the start, but he was incredibly lucky because I'm with you. I reckon he released early, and he was just lucky when the lights went out.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't think he actually reacted to the start. And Valtteri, you're perfectly welcome to come onto the podcast and argue with us. But I don't think he reacted. I don't think he reacted to the start. I think he did jump it by from the fact that he didn't react to lights. But he got lucky with when the lights went out. It just happened to be that when he released it, the lights then went out and he was okay. Because I don't think it's possible to react that quickly to the lights and take into account the amount of time it actually takes to get the car moving. Yeah, which is what Seb's argument was. So a bit of background on that for anyone who may be listening and might not know, because one of the things Martin Brundle said was that it's illegal for the drivers to anticipate the start. That's true, but it's more that the teams aren't allowed to anticipate the start because we had the system back in the mid-2000s where they found that the teams were reacting to the jump start sensors being turned off in the road, which is part of the start process. Just before the lights go out, the sensors are deactivated in the road, and the teams, particularly Renault, who are the ones who pioneered this, the cars were actually electronically reacting to the sensors being turned off. So the reason that the human error element was introduced rather than just being a black and white jump start, or what Martin Brundle termed the anticipation of the start, was to stop, because they can't stop sending the signal to the sensors in the road. They have to build in an element that says, but if you do launch the car within 0.2 of a second of the lights going out, we're going to assume that you've got a system in the car that saw the lights, that anticipated it, which is why, rather than saying, well, no, he clearly didn't jump the start because, look, the lights are off and then he went, but there is a buffer in there that says that the FIA will look at it if it happens within a certain amount of time, because they'll make an assumption that you didn't react to the lights, that you were triggered by something else, like logging onto Twitter or something. But
I was waiting for that.
But yeah, so that's my stance. I think he just got lucky. I think he jumped at the start for for a lack of better terminology, but he got lucky with when the lights went out.
Yep.
It's also another reason why they vary the start times.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
In the late 90s, I think at Nürburgring in 99, the teams I think the FIA had thought that teams had sort of worked out how long it took for the lights to go out. And at the Nürburgring, they, instead of going straight to green or lights out, they boarded the start, or they held it a bit longer, and that's when half the field took off and the lights were still on.
Sneaky Charlie, who shouldn't be in a job anymore. All right, so we've discussed the jump start. The last thing to talk about, which we've touched on a couple of times, is the driver market. And I think the four of us were all talking about this over the weekend, and I think we all came to the same conclusion, which was that the driver market for 2018 will actually probably not change that much, but I think all hell's going to break loose in 2019.
Yeah, so Ferrari said they don't want Alo. That was, or Marchioni said
they don't want to. So they don't want to win.
So they don't want to win something. Constructors or drivers.
Trust Ferrari to walk away from a winning strategy.
Marchioni doesn't want to win. He doesn't know what he's doing.
So that's a bit early, given that Seb hasn't signed anything to say something like that. But anyway, they've ruled him out. Renault can't give Alonso a winning car. Prost said.
Plus, Renault can't fit Hulkenberg, Robert Kubica, and Fernando Alonso into two cars either.
Could be an innovative three-driver strategy.
It could be.
Could be a waste of time.
Alo could show up and do the ones that Kubica can't do because of his hand.
Oh, jeez.
That could work.
And then Mercedes, I think they're not going to be taking Alo either, not with Lewis still there. And he's not a Red Bull driver, so he's stuck at McLaren.
So to you, the driver market is a one-driver market because you only care about where Alo is.
No, but if you think about it, all the Red Bull guys are tied down.
I'm not so sure about the Red Bull guys. I think
they've got the contracts.
They've got contracts, but Jos Verstappen has shown that he's not scared to play hardball with teams, and I think that if there was the possibility that Ferrari had something on the table next year for Max, that Jos and Max would burn their bridges at Red Bull in a heartbeat to go to Ferrari.
Yeah, they would, but all the talk and all the rumors is that he wants it. The earliest he can do it is 2019. If he could do it for 2018, they'd be saying 2018. Do
you think that if he spends the next couple of races having more mechanical failures, that he is eventually just going to flip the tables?
I think he probably is flipping tables. We just don't see it.
I think he's done a couple Totos and smacked the table.
Yeah,
but to make a decision for 2019 already.
Well, if you believe the rumors, Sebastian's already made a decision for 2019.
Yeah, that makes no sense to me whatsoever. I think if people were smart, we'd be seeing a whole heap of 1-year deals, and then all hell will break loose in 2019. But yeah, I don't think there's. I personally think the Red Bull guys are locked down. I think Hamilton will stay at Mercedes for next year. I think Seb really can only stay therefore at Ferrari.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt that Hamilton and Vettel are going to stay put for next year. But I am curious about 2019 when they're both out of contract.
Yeah, that's so far away, and probably next year's competitiveness of each of the teams will play a big role in that. So yeah, the damn squib, I think. Unless you're interested in where Kubica might drive.
I think there's only one team where Kubica will drive next year.
Yeah,
Ferrari.
The best. Yeah, that's where he was meant to go. Maybe they punt Kimi for him or something.
God, that would have to turn up for the books.
That's worth doing.
Yeah.
Oh, they couldn't risk it, surely.
Why not? Kimmy's a bit limp-wristed as well.
Oh, no, Greg. Oh, jeez.
Kubica with one hand is probably better than Kimi at the moment.
All right, Luce, inject some sanity into this discussion.
No comment.
Ah,
Put
listen
it-
to
good
it.
I
idea
think
was
that
what you
means,
should.
yeah, that is, I think his silence is telling us.
So I think most of the teams will stay pretty static next year down the paddock. I think that the only possible change would be a shock walking of Max from Red Bull. But does he really want to burn that bridge when Red Bull could definitely build a good car next year? Who knows? Like, particularly if that Renault power unit is actually competitive by the end of the year, and that, you know, they're certainly on the improve. Then maybe he doesn't want to be so quick to roll Red Bull under the bus. And I think that's the problem with what the strategy he's taking at the moment, where he is being very aggressive with the team in the press. I feel like that...
It's funny because he's making the team be aggressive with signs.
Yeah, because the thing is that
Yeah.
Red Bull can't afford to let Sainz walk because
Yeah.
Verstappen may very well walk.
They're
So
taking all their max frustration out on signs.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
yeah, Max is like, I hate the team, you all suck, and they're going, well, Carlos, come here, we've got the belt out. I mean, you know, what did I do wrong? Well, you know,
We're giving you a shot, Carlos. We're giving you a shot. How can you be saying these things?
Yeah,
about
so
us?
that
I
was-
didn't say anything.
that was the last thing I wanted to comment on was the dog treatment of drivers by Red Bull. So yeah, I think the paddock will be pretty set. The question is whether Ferrari will keep Kimi for next year, knowing that
I
keeping
reckon that
knowing
he
that
will.
keeping
He tends
him
to linger.
knowing
Lock
that,
it in, Eddie. Lock it in.
so Ferrari just keeps sacrificing a shot at the constructors' championship. They did the same thing with Massa for years, you know. So it's Ferrari gonna Ferrari basically. All right. Well, the last thing I wanted to say was in regards to the Red Bull Young Driver Program and the argument that both
Now the Red Bull old
yeah
driver program.
the Red Bull. I've been at Toro Rosso for 3 years and I'm in need of a pension driver program. Both what Christian Horner and Helmut Marko were saying in regards to Carlos Sainz about, oh, we gave you your start, you owe us better than that. At what point do Red Bull drivers or young drivers who have come through a driver program at all, at what point do they stop owing the team anything for bringing them into the sport? What do you think, Luce?
The third season. If obviously the first year, like they'll get a year where okay, maybe they're just learning and getting to know the ropes. The second year, they've shown that they're good enough. So the start of the third year, like if they're still there, as we've seen with Toro Rosso in the past, they'll shaft guys no problem. Like if they're there, you know, for the third season, you know, then
I think it's pretty simple. It's just however long their contract says they should be loyal for, and then as soon as that's over, then they should be free to go wherever they want.
What do you think? Yep.
Watch like Buemi had his career destroyed because
and Jev.
And
yeah,
you want to read Jaime Alguersuari's account of how he was axed from Toro Rosso.
yeah.
Wait,
So
yeah.
I think those guys probably didn't. Science is shown to be quick enough over his teammate to warrant promotion, and of course he matched Max more or less when they were teammates. So for him, there's no promotion on the cards at all, and it was the same for Buemi and Alguersuari, except for the fact that they were way too evenly matched for Red Bull to think that either one of them were any good.
Yeah.
So they punted both of them. So I think the point at which you don't need to remain loyal is the point at which your chances of going to the main team are gone or disappearing. And you've got to fend for yourself at that point.
I'd make it more simple than that. My view would be that you're no longer loyal to them when you prove you deserve your place in the sport, and other teams begin to get interested in you as long as you, as Greg said, as long as you fulfill the terms of your contract. If they come back and say, sign this new contract, and you go, I don't want to because other teams are talking to me, and they go, oh, they're like, well, check your privilege, son. You remember who got you here. It's like, at that point, I think that's a scummy thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's a scummy thing for Red Bull to attempt to hold that over. I do wonder, though, would they be so bullish with Sainz if it wasn't for the fact they were worried about Verstappen walking from the team?
Well, then
No.
he'd be in the top team. If
No,
they
well, No, I don't mean, if they clearly think. I mean, obviously they thought last year Verstappen is better than Sainz. They want Verstappen in the main car. But are they being bullish with Sainz? Like if Verstappen was a comfy little mushroom in his car and wasn't saying anything and he was getting good results and there was no threat of him leaving and there was no threat of Ricciardo leaving, do you think that Toro Rosso would just go, yeah, Carlos, you know what? If you get a bigger contract, that's fine. Are they only playing hardball with him because they need him in case Verstappen leaves?
That's the impression I had of it.
Or Ricciardo leaves. I think Red Bull are worried for, if not next year, the year after.
Yeah.
That one of those two will be gone if they don't win the championship or have a car to win the championship. So it's his insurance policy for both of them, and they want to hold on to him for a year longer at the minimum.
Yeah, so if you believe what Christian Horner was saying, that they took up their option that they've got on Carlos Sainz, I find it bizarre that going into his 4th year in the sport, Carlos doesn't have an option to say, you know what, I don't want that, I want to go somewhere else.
I thought that was my understanding.
Well, that's what I always thought.
After 3 years, were free to look elsewhere.
That was always a story. But I guess that was comfortable for Red Bull to back up that story when they never had a driver who was in demand. So all those other Toro Rosso drivers we mentioned, sure enough, particularly if you, like I said before, Alguersuari's story where he was doing a promotion event in December and he got back from that CESPA promotional event and then got told he was sacked. So, and that was in December with no chance of signing a contract anywhere else. Yes, timing can be scummy, but none of those other drivers were, maybe with the exception of Jev, and it didn't even really happen, were ever really garnering any interest from any other team. Sainz is the first driver that they've legitimately had in a Toro Rosso program who other teams legitimately interested in signing for next year. So is it just that there's a clause in that Red Bull driver contract that we haven't seen before because they've never been in this situation before where they've got this driver going into his 4th season?
Yeah, who knows, maybe. It depends how long his original contract was for, whether it was for the 3 years or the 2 years or...
Yeah.
Because how long did Buemi and Alguersuari last? They lasted 2 years, yeah?
Yeah, less. So 2 years.
So this is unknown territory, and then obviously if he's gone past that 2 year point, he's probably on a different contract to those guys.
Yeah, but
and they would have gone, okay, the next deal is for 3 years.
So the same question
after the 2 year point.
The same question I asked before about Verstappen, which was if there's something on Ferrari, for example, do you burn your bridges with Red Bull and walk, knowing that you can never drive for them ever again? Or same deal for Sainz. If legitimately Sainz gets an offer from somewhere, or does he burn his bridges at Toro Rosso and say that's it? I walk. Red Bull, all you guys can get stuffed. I've done my 3 years. I know that I'm burning all my bridges here, but that's it. I'm walking. And yeah, do you think that there's a possibility that could happen? Like, particularly if Ferrari get increasingly gnashing their teeth over Kimi Raikkonen's performances, do they go to Carlos Sainz and say, you know what, whatever it takes, get out of your Red Bull contract?
If I was Sainz, I'd do it. Red Bull have obviously they've shown in the past what they do to drivers, and even if you get into that top team, there's no if Max is there, there's no real guarantees that they're going to treat you as well as what they do him, because he's obviously a golden child of theirs, even though obviously they're butting heads at the moment. But if you get a chance to go somewhere else, and it's going to be somewhere like Ferrari, I reckon you go for it.
But here's the problem. This is the flip side of the other side of that double-edged sword. Is that does Sainz then get a reputation for being a difficult driver to work with, which in turn means that big teams won't talk to him because they don't want drivers like that?
Well, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I agree with what Lewis said. To be honest, you don't want to stay. Well, Max is there. You don't want to be at Red Bull, and Max is going to be there next year. And for me, the same thing goes for Ricciardo. Well, he's there. Forget it. Eject yourself and go to another top team.
Yeah.
If you leave before Max does, and then Max leaves, Red Bull don't have enough young drivers to fill the top team anyway. So you could always come back.
Well, I mean,
who are they going to pull up? Gasly. They're not going to make him drive for the top team. They're going to be short on drivers.
No, so and that could also be why there's all of a sudden this talk of re-signing Kvyat as well. Because if they do lose Ricciardo or Verstappen, more likely Verstappen and Ricciardo at this stage, then that does mean that they've got to elevate Sainz to the top team, and it means they need an experienced driver in Toro Rosso, which means they keep Kvyat. And Gasly is not really knocking the door down. So, but the flip side, the other side is Ferrari is naturally the only team at the top who's even potentially got a driver vacancy next year if the Red Bull drivers stay. So, and that's only if is the fact that Macchioni's saying, you know, Kimi Räikkönen's a laggard or a laggard. No, at least he's not a Ledyard. Then is that the first signs from Ferrari that they are definitely considering not replacing Kimi next year? Greg, you haven't said anything for a while, so.
What's this? Sorry, yes, I just heard Ledyard.
Yes.
Problem there.
Oh, problem there. So I was just saying that if is the fact that Macchioni's been out and publicly had a dig at Kimi, is that the first sign from Ferrari where they're saying that they're frustrated with Kimi? Yeah. Well, not punning him.
I know they're frustrated.
Is it the first sign that they're legitimately considering replacing him for next year? Like it's something they're definitely considering.
Yeah, why not? If it's
I think that's that. No? They're trying to re-sign him. And they're saying, give us a reason to re-sign you.
Oh man, I really hope that it's not like, he gets a good podium somewhere. Oh, okay, yeah, no worries. He's come good. Like all the other 100%
times. They'll do it. They did it last year after he had a good first half of the year.
Yeah,
he was on the podium in Austria, and then they re-signed him, and he was never on the podium again.
Yeah.
I swear they're looking for a reason to re-sign him.
Oh, just wait and see. He's going to go out there one weekend, pole position, race win, lead every lap.
Probably Spa.
It'll be Spa.
Yeah, Spa.
But Marchioni, he boot up him so that he has a reason, so he can see Kimi respond, and then they can re-sign him. Yeah. Otherwise, you just boot him.
I mean, if
they had no interest in re-signing him, what's the point in sticking a rocket up him? Just get rid of him and that's it.
I mean, Ferrari at the moment, they keep Kimi. They're no hope in the constructors, not against Bottas and Hamilton. So if the constructors championship doesn't matter to them and all they want to do is make sure that they've got an able lieutenant there to help Seb, then keeping Kimi is the right thing to do. If they actually want to be a race team and actually try and 1-2 a race, then Kimi's not the driver for them.
Yeah, but you know how Ferrari operate.
Yep.
It's the same as when Michael was there.
And Massa. They kept Massa for too long.
They kept him as long as they wanted him. And then they kind of signed Raikkonen, I think, because Alonso was starting to badmouth the team a little bit. And they're like, we'll stuff you.
I didn't think Jean Todt liked him.
Didn't like Alo?
Yeah.
But
it went way back.
Before then, yeah. Oh, yeah. This was when, yeah. That was when he signed from McLaren, wasn't it? Or even before then?
Maybe even before then. I think it goes back to early in Alonso's career. But anyway.
Yeah. But they with Alonso in 2013, I think he's starting to get on the radio and harass the team like he did in Monza that year, and then it started to go a bit sour. So Ferrari were like, you're not bigger than the team. Here, fucking deal with Raikkonen.
Mate, we sacked the guy who had 4 world championships. What do you think we're going to do to you who's got 2?
Yeah, so that was where they deviated from the let's go for the Drivers' Championship only. They deviated for a year, realised Kimi was useless, and then bought in Seb to be the number 1.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we covered off a lot of stuff tonight. I've managed to go quite long, which is good. We covered a lot of stuff. So, finish up with some final thoughts. We'll start with you, Greg. Final thoughts. And obviously, we have Silverstone this weekend, so it's a quick turnaround, back-to-back races.
Yep. The championship's shaping up really good. Be interesting to see if Hamilton can get some form back. Yeah, it'll come down. I expect him to be strong, though. I expect him to be strong at Silverstone. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. The one thing I'm curious about is how good Red Bull are going to go.
Yep. Luce?
I reckon we could see a 3-way fight at Silverstone. That's my taking away from from Austria.
You're going to tell us which three? Is it like Stroll, Palmer, and Magnussen? Or?
Oh, mate, yeah, they're going to be
Get out of Q1.
they're going to be battling it out for 20th place.
Are you saying Hamilton, Bottas, Vettel, or you mean Red Bull,
No,
Ferrari, Mercedes?
I reckon it'll be Seb, Hamilton, and then pick a Red Bull driver.
Okay. All right, Matt. Final thoughts.
Just throwing a biased comment here.
Yep.
Interested to see where Alonso can actually qualify and finish with the new Honda engine on a track that's a bit more aero dependent potentially.
Serious question: are they taking? They'll be taking penalties this weekend, yeah?
Depends what they do. I think Alonso's Spec 3 ICE is fine, so they have the option of running the old MGU-H with that, but apparently that's a reliability risk. Or they throw a whole new ICE MGU-H, and then he will cop a penalty for that.
I wouldn't expect McLaren to be that strong at Silverstone anyway, yeah.
Don't know.
Okay.
What's Christian Horner say about the power effect at Silverstone?
I'll get him on a phone later and ask him.
For me, I think. Look, I've looked at the last year's practice times, and McLaren were pretty good, constantly top 8.
Okay.
So I expect Fernando to be able to do something decent. Maybe could be best of the rest, but we'll see.
I reckon they'll do well there.
Yep.
Yeah, I think historically they go well there. So.
All right. Well, my final thoughts are just to keep an eye on component usage. I think it's going to start becoming a factor in the championship very soon, particularly in regards to Sebastian Vettel. I think Mercedes are on track to not take penalties this year at all at the moment, outside of gearboxes, of course. But in terms of power unit, keep an eye on Ferrari's usage. I think it's about to become a factor in the championship. All right, we had no fan questions tonight, or fans at all. But want to thank everybody who did tune in and have a listen. I did see there was a few people passing through. So, thanks to you guys for stepping in. Next week we will be delayed because I will be away next week. We will do the Silverstone round the week after. So, thanks guys for your contributions. You all did really good. And we'll catch you after the next race.
Cheers.
See you later.
Go Kiwi!